class. The silver category looks like it's just about tied up already, but all the other positions are up for grabs, and of course the overall title to be decided as well. Well, first things first is to get everybody dialed into the circuit and to get themselves up to speed. No dramas so far this morning. We've had practice for the Formula Renault and for the GT Drivers Club as well, without any major incident or accident, so hopefully things will continue in much the same vein here. The Circuit of Catalunya, well known to most of the drivers, home of course of the Spanish Grand Prix, and this is a big weekend here in Catalunya with a lot of home talents making the crowd, or giving the crowd something to cheer on, as well as the overall title contenders. So session will be an hour and a half, 90 minutes to dial themselves fully into the track. Temperatures look to rise tomorrow as well. Temperature at the moment is about 23, 24 degrees of air, so add about 10 degrees of track temperature to that. Little hazy cloud this morning is gradually burning off, and tomorrow looks like the daytime high will be around 27. So for our final endurance race this season, endurance will definitely be a major factor. Looking here at the Oman Racing machine, Ahmed Al-Hati, Sally Yolek and Charlie Eastwood, the three drivers of this Aston Martin. And the 97 car, one of our Pro-Am contenders. And these guys with a very good shot at the title again. TF Sport, the winners in class in Spa-Francorchamps in the 24 hours, with Nicky Team added to the driving strength, courtesy of the factory Aston Martin team. And this, of course, is the new shape Vantage. So the old rounded model, which ran out of homologation at the end of last year, and this, the new GT3 version of the Vantage. And as you would expect, it's basically the previous package, but with everything improved in all directions. So better aerodynamics, better power, better handling, better mechanical grip as well. And these guys, one of the first cars out of the pits. Now their Pro-Am rivals will also be looking to try and produce the results here in Barcelona. So let's take a look at finally championship points. Take a look at who is where. A couple of changes to lineups from the original entry list that was announced as well. So there's some new drivers to be conjuring with. No change in this car. Fastest car at the moment is Nico Bastian, the number 90 car with the ACA ASP Mercedes, the silver class car. And Nico Bastian already with 2 silver titles under his belt, likely to claim a third this weekend for the Endurance Series as well. Jim Pla, one of the 3 drivers of ACA ASP's 87 Pro-Am car. He is the outside shot to try and grab the Pro-Am title, sharing with Mauro Ricci and Jean-Luc Bobelik this weekend. But Pla has been the consistent man in the car with a variety of different co-drivers. Well, the trio that are in the car this weekend, Jean-Luc Bobelik, Jim Pla and Mauro Ricci, were winners in Paul Ricard. Jim Pla with a bit of a long shot. It will need to be quite an upset if he is to claim the title here. But as long as the mathematics are there and possible, nobody gives up, do they? So Pla with a purple first sector, losing a little bit in the second sector of the lap. It'll be interesting to see how the Mercedes balances out against some of its rivals. things about Circuit de Catalunya is that the middle sector is very much tighter than the fast and flowing first sector. And sector 3 is a little quicker, bar the chicane right towards the end of the lap that was added, well, I suppose 5 or 6 years ago now. Kind of rather breaks up the flow of the track. Fastest car at the moment is being driven by Michael Meadows. That's Acura ASP's Pro car number 88, shared with Raffaele Marcello and Vincent Abril. Jordan Grogor has just gone second quickest. That's the Gulf Porsche you can see there, just at the bottom of the screen. And Marco Mappelli aboard 563 with Andrea Caldarelli. And that is a car that is not only championship contender in the pro class, but also one of the cars that has a change to the entry list. Dennis Lind was originally down to drive the car, and he is not able to be here. And so Spanish driver Albert Costa has been subbed in at the last minute, or near last minute, at 563, battling for the overall title. Problem for the 31 Bentley, facing the wrong way. But getting back underway again, the Team Parker car. Derek Pearce and Seb Morris driving that one. Again, that was due to be a 3-car entry, but Rob Smith, at the moment, on our current entry list, does not appear to have been signed on. So looks like Seb Morris just losing that. Seb Morris with lots of Bentley experience with the previous version of the GT3. And in the gravel is GRT's number 19 car. So Arno Santamato in that one. And he has, again, taken a lot too much curb here and just backed it off. Very enticing, that inside curb at the chicane, but does not do you any favours at all. And he's gone quite a long way in. So what does the race director do now? Well, it's very early doors, but he is down in the gravel at turn 11. I'm afraid that might mean that we need to get a rescue vehicle in there, and that might mean a red flag early in the session. And there we go, red flags are out. So just under 10 minutes in, 9 minutes, 27 seconds in, we've got the first red flag. So everybody will head back to the pits. Now there's a car that we'll be watching a lot this weekend, the SMP Racing Ferrari. Miguel Molina, Mikel Alishin and Davide Rigon. Now, this is a team that only does the Endurance Cup, and so they are leading the points in the Endurance standings, and quite handsomely over the number 5 Black Falcon Mercedes of Jelmer Berman, Meyer Engel and Lucas Stoltz. So the SMP racing car with a 22-point advantage, 25 for a win, plus 1 for fastest lap. Mathematically, yeah, well, we don't want to go there, do we? Not this early in the game. Back down in the Black Falcon garage, number 6 car is in already. Hubert Haupt, Patrick Assenheimer and Davide Fumanelli. You can see the R Motorsport Aston Martins lining up just behind. So who was fastest? Well, it was the number 2 WRT Audi, actually, which Alex Riberas took out first. He shares with Dries van Tor and Ezequiel Perez Companc. And here is our rescue vehicle. Well, let's get down into the pits, catch up with Louise Beckett, who's patrolling the pit lane this weekend.
Well, Well, it's a big weekend for the 563, Andrea. You're fighting for the lead and win, but a different driver lineup for you.
Yeah, unfortunately we had a slight issue with Dennis. Nothing serious, but unfortunately we miss him this weekend. But we have Albert with us. It's a good replacement. He's here listening to us. Yeah, it's an important weekend, but we are really ready to fight.
And so Alberto's doing okay with the team, is he? You fitting in all right?
Yeah, he's doing well. He's doing well. Yeah, we had testing yesterday, day before yesterday, so we are in a good pace. Just now we are working on for this free practice. We are working on the race setup. So let's see tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. I'll just have a quick word with Alberto, who's here. How much time have you had in the car?
I mean, it's amazing not to be here. Actually, on Thursday when I got the call, last minute, I was just, waiting because I knew it's difficult to explain, because already on Wednesday night I had a message, and I was planning to do a different weekend, and at the end, to be here, it's a dream. My home track last weekend I was with another championship, so again with different tires. And yeah, I'm really happy. For me, it's top team, top driver, so what else? Now I have to do my best, and let's see if next year I can be here again like last year. So really
well, we look forward to seeing what you can do.
Thank you very much. Ciao.
Thanks.
Always fun to have Albert Costa around. He's got a lot of time on this track. Started his career in single-seaters in the Renault paddock, so he did 1600 Formula Renault, in fact, then 2-litre Renault Euro Cup. He did World Series by Renault as well, so lots of time spent here in Barcelona. This was kind of home from home for World Series by Renault, and knows the track well. And as he says, great opportunity to race here with what is one of the top teams. Now here are the other driver lineup, or here is the other driver lineup that is battling for that overall title. Maro Engel, Lukas Stolz, Jelmer Berman. They and the crew of the 563 Lamborghini tied on points and lost on a tiebreak in the European Series, and so now looking for this Endurance Cup title. Lining up at the pit exit, lime green 54 dynamic Porsche, winners in Monza, and the Lamborghini heading back to the pit lane, a little chastened and shedding gravel everywhere undoubtedly. When you go off backwards, it tends to get into places that you're not expecting. Maro Engel, Lukas Stolz, Andrea Caldarelli and Marco Marpelli, 2 points apart at the top of the table. Christian Engelhardt, Mirko Bortolotti in third position, under pressure from behind for that final podium spot, but it is a 2-horse race for the overall title in the Blancpain GT Cup. 76R Motorsport Aston, Alex Lynn, Marvin Kirchhoffer and Jake Dennis as a combination of youth and youth, actually, frankly. Alex Lynn, almost the old boy in there, and definitely not old in any way, shape or form. In fact, the Aston driver, and Jake Dennis, another young single-seater star who has found a home in GT racing. The Orange One FFF Racing team car, and at the moment Giacomo Alto in the car. Shares 519 with Giovanni Venturini and Phil Keane. Phil Keane stretching his wings away from a lot of Lamborghini racing in British GT over the last few years. Taylor Proto, Michele Beretta and Andrea Amici in 555. That's the silver car in the Orange One lineup. Here's GPX, Stewie Hall, sharing that Porsche, the Gulf liveried car, with the son of Roel Goethe, with whom Stuart Hall won the World Championship in endurance racing in the Pro-Am class a couple of years ago. They're in the silver category. So battling for honours in that class. And the Gulf Racing livery with Roel Goethe, the older of Roel Goethe's sons, in the car, and Jordan Grogor, the South African driver, the third man. So back to green flag, and still an hour and a quarter on the clock. So one of the two Boots and Gignon cars going out there. One gold and black, the other black and gold. Michael Meadows is in Acura ASP's red 88. It's a bit of a change of livery. It's been blue, white and black earlier in the season, and he's showing with Vincent Abril and Raffaele Marcello in their pro-class cars. Looks like Davide Rigon heading out in 72, the SMP Ferrari. And Jim Platt in the 87. Interesting to find out how many sports car races Jean-Luc Bobelic has done over the years. I think you need to take off more than your socks to count that number. Rover Racing's Porsches here in the familiar grey, white and black, and a really starry lineup in the two cars. 99 with Dirk Werner, Matt Campbell and Dennis Olsen, all former Porsche junior drivers, now factory stars. And in the other car, 98, Sven Muller, Romain Dumas and Mathieu Jaminet. Nothing at all to question about the lineup or the quality of the team. Rover Racing very successful with BMW's M6. The M8 less of a raceable car, and they've now changed over to running Porsches. 911 GT3R doesn't quite seem to be the competitive proposition that you would have hoped for, that they would have hoped for at the beginning of the season. As ever with Porsche, you imagine that's only a matter of time. I'm sure M Sport and Bentley will want to come back next year with a little more opportunity to score big results. The new Bentley Continental GT3 has been a little disappointing. 108, Callum McLeod, Andy Soucek and Maxim Soulé, and 107, their regular lineup, Jordan Pepper, Jules Gounon and Stephen Kane. And Andy Soucek will be doing quite a lot of driving this weekend. He's also part of this big speed weekend here in Barcelona, which is part of a fundraiser and awareness raiser for the Maria Di Vallota Foundation, which is not a charity per se, but is trying to raise awareness and help raise funding for other charitable operations. And of course, Maria Di Vallota, like Andy Soucek, raced quite a lot in Super League Formula, and Andy will be demonstrating Maria's old car here over the course of the weekend. I'm delighted to welcome into the commentary booth this morning John Watson. Good morning, John.
Martin, good morning. Hope you're going to pay my tickets.
I'll pay whatever it takes right now.
It's been a trip and a half to get here.
Already?
Anyway.
Well, at least the weather is beautiful and sunny.
I need to take my jumper off, but nevertheless, perfect weather here in Barcelona. It's going to be gorgeous today and tomorrow. And as far as I can see, with the field that we have got, it's going to be the usual traffic jam in the first hour until things begin to sort of unfold and wind out and let the racing begin.
I think patience is going to be, as ever in these races, that your most useful ally, isn't it? Patience and pace, you've got to have both.
Well, I think the idea of pace is very important. The idea of patience is something a bit of an anathema to a racing driver, because if they don't see a gap, they often feel, well, if there isn't one there, I might look to create a gap. And of course, that's then when we get into problems, especially on the, well, there's a spin just up at turn 5, there we are, the 93 Ferrari. Turn 4, I should say. So there is always this concern about grid position. Obviously, the pro cars are going to be the cars at the front. Some of the Pro-Am cars will also be at the front. But then when you get into the Silver Cup, the Am and whatever, you get this mix and match through the field. If you've got a bad qualifying and you find yourself midfield, you're going to have a long afternoon to get through to your rightful position.
How far into the race are they going to be before they are able to see exactly what they've got compared to their rivals? Is qualifying going to tell them everything that they need to know?
Well, certainly the key is that one lap of qualifying. Well, in fact, there's 3 laps because you've got 3 drivers in most cars. But to make sure that across the board of your driver lineup, you've got pairings that match, particularly in the pro cars, because those are the ones that are going to be fundamentally at the front of the field. They will make the break, but it's the group of cars maybe from row 5 back. And because we know Barcelona is a circuit where overtaking in a race context It's a challenge. Therefore, you have to be patient. And also, the pace of all these cars in sheer straight line speed or acceleration is identical. The difference just comes down to the ability of the driver behind the wheel to make the car a little bit more efficient and effective through the turns. And these are long corners here, 16 corners in this Barcelona circuit. Lots of them turn 3, for example, long corner. And then up to turn 9, that infamous turn 9, great corner. You can't get that close, so you're having to always be patient. Patience, I think you said it, is the key, but it's something, as I said, is a bit of a stranger to racing drivers.
Well, we always get down to that thing, if you've got to finish first.
Indeed, indeed you do.
That's the real difficult thing. Adrian Amstutz in what will be, we gather, his last racing weekend. He's going to step back from racing. The team will continue, but Adrian Amstutz, at least for the moment, racing drivers have a habit of finding it hard to retire, but at the moment, a little swan song for Adrian Amstutz, so he'll be in that Barwell Am car. Red flags fly for the second time in the session.
There's Chris Froggatt, who has managed to up at turn 5. It's that downhill, late apex turn 3. You're braking on a downhill. And if you do the things that you, I mean, going back to the good old days of VW Beetles, when you come to a corner, don't brake, turn and lift off. Yeah. And I wonder, was that the case of Chris Froggatt here, turn 5, or maybe there was an assist. We're just seeing the left-hand side of the car, so there isn't any indication there was contact. So this one, from what we can see, might be down to the driver. Yeah, it just looks like he might have stalled the car as well. I mean, he's not buried anywhere. He is, unfortunately, though, on the track. And it doesn't look like he's able to get it fired up again either. So, red flags are out, and again, still the number 2 WRT Audi of Alex Riberas is the fastest car. That was a lap that was set a little earlier. 5:19, second quickest now. That's the Pro Lamborghini, driven by Giacomo Altoe from FFF Racing Team. Luis Beckett down in the pits at Oman Racing. Let's get down and hear from them.
Charlie Eastwood's just brought in the number 97 while we've got this red flag. Ahmed, it's a big weekend for you, another endurance race, which hopefully you can be victorious in.
Yeah, it's a really big race weekend for us. It's been a great championship for us so far. Winning at Spa in the Pro-Am was amazing. But Barcelona is a completely different circuit, very technical, very difficult to overtake. And it's just what we need to do is have great teamwork.
So is that the plan? How many times have you been to Barcelona? How well do you know it?
I know it pretty well. I've raced at least for 4 seasons here. But, you know, with the new surface and the new car, there's new challenges. And we're getting our heads around the car, and Charlie and Sally are doing a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, TF Sport, the Oman Racing Team. Tom Ferrier started racing in Great Britain, was a Formula 3 driver, very successful, and then decided that there was a little bit more of a future in actually running a racing team. And actually with Oman Racing, with Ahmed Al-Harthi, started TF Sports campaign 6 years ago in British GT, another one of the SRO run GT championships, and has graduated now up to running GT cars, and predominantly Aston Martins, in just about every championship that there is going, and continuing to extend that as well. Number 6 Black Falcon, silver car, Hubert Haupt, Patrick Assenheimer and Davide Fumanelli in that car. And here, Mauro Engel, Lucas Stoltz, Jelmer Berman, very successful trio, Black Falcon, another one of the teams that you always look to in any category to produce front-running cars. John Watson, teams of that ability, like Black Falcon, have, it's like any good team anywhere. They attract talent, they attract engineering talent, they attract driving talent, and with the success that brings, they attract sponsors as well. And it's a virtuous circle, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at the pro cars, I mean, those are the ones that are the well-supported cars, maybe more commercially than privately supported. It's in the Pro-Am and the Am categories where you find drivers, maybe gentlemen drivers in the case of the Am category, who come and maybe they're our age, maybe your age, not mine, and they come and they're fulfilling the dream. They're fulfilling something which they didn't achieve or hadn't the opportunity to participate in their younger days. So that's where the private backing might come. Whereas if you're looking at the teams such as WRT or Black Vulcan or ACA ASP, those are fundamentally commercially funded teams. But in some cases, I mean, in the case of WRT, Audi only provides one of their so-called pro drivers or centrally contracted drivers. Yep. So the second driver may, in some cases, be making a contribution to the budget, but to have the privilege of driving in such an outstanding team. Absolutely right. And again, you know, when you've got that pro lineup and that success, then that attracts gentlemen drivers who want to be running in the silver class, or drivers who want to run in Pro-Am to your team as well. So ACA ASP, again, it's not just their pro cars, here's their silver lineup. Again, that's a strong looking lineup of drivers as well. Well, I mean, in one of those cars, you've got Nico Bastian. Yeah. And I mean, Nico Bastian, that car won, Thomas Neubar and Bastian won at Brands Hatch, the second race of that 2-race weekend. Yeah. So, and there is a Silver Cup car defeating pro cars. You sort of have to scratch your head and wonder what's going on. But you know, that's how close the racing is. Well, and it's about, you know, it's position. Nico Bastian won 2 silver titles last year, and if the car starts the race tomorrow, will win 3 silver titles this year. So, okay, is he still going to be a silver driver next year? We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I mean, that's some of the vagaries of life, isn't it? Well, I think that the biggest vagary, actually, in the different grading of licenses is actually if you can dig out an outstanding race driver who maybe has gone into a quieter period in his life and now qualifies as a bronze. 2 thumbs up for that, baby, because that is, you are quids in every respect. Exactly right. And that's what teams are doing. They're looking around for drivers who would fulfill that particular requirement. And, you know, I mean, Chris Buncombe is one of those people. And I mean, I had it in my ear just a second ago, am I making a comeback? I've never left. I haven't retired. Find where it says I've officially retired. Exactly right. Never retire, you never know. Yeah, I was talking to Jan Lammers last year, and he'd just come down, I think, from silver to bronze or something. You know, still can pedal. I tell you what, Jan Lammers right now, I would wish he was driving a racing car. He's trying to put together the Dutch Grand Prix for 2020. Yeah. He's had more headaches, I bet you, doing that than he ever had as a race driver. I bet you, yeah. Well, it'd be fantastic to see Grand Prix racing back at Zandvoort, but now, if Nelson Piquet's famous analogy of Monaco, which is trying to race a bicycle around your living room or a motorcycle around your living room, I definitely think Zandvoort's going to be in that category. So, new fastest lap, or no, different driver in the fastest car. Tico Perez Compang has taken over the number 2 WRT car. That Audi is quickest, 5:19 still second quickest. New fastest lap though from Raffaele Marciello. He's in the 88 ACA ASP car. That's the red Mercedes. And not a better lap coming in here at the moment from Mikel Alishin, but he's taken over the SMP car. Who went out first in it? Davide Rigon went out first in it, so he's had a little drive. One of the things you've got to do in the 90 minutes here, John, in this free practice, is get everybody in, get them bedded in, get their laps done, and then get feedback from all 3 drivers and try and figure out which one's bluffing and which one actually has got his head around the setup best before you go into qualifying, because there's no time to waste. When you've got to circle 3 drivers through, 90 minutes sounds like an awful long time, but actually it disappears pretty quickly. It certainly does. I mean, you need, the first thing a team, I would imagine, would do is cycle through all 3 drivers in this session as quickly as possible. I mean, they know this racetrack, they know the tyres. The only thing that changes is, you know, whatever the weather's doing, it's about 21, 22 Celsius right now. The track, when it was last used, well, it was used yesterday for a bronze test, but it's still, in relative terms, what I would describe as being green. Yep. So the track's going to improve. So what you don't want to do is start rushing in, springs, roll bars, dampers, aero, take the car apart, re-engineer it, let the track come to the circuit. So let the car come to the circuit, and then you will find you've reached a point where that's roughly where we think we need to start then looking forward to what can we do to improve our performance. But get those 3 drivers, in my view, cycled through as quickly as possible. Just you mentioned Raffaele Marciello in the 88 Mercedes. Michael Meadows back in that car. He hasn't been in it for a number of races in the Sprint and Endurance Championship in the last 2 or 3 rounds. So Michael Meadows back in, and he's sharing the car obviously with Raffaele Marciello and Vincent Abril. They've been that regular 2-driver partnership. Michael Meadows in for the 3rd driver.
Yeah, a little difficult when you've got a car that is doing, or a duo that are doing the sprint races and the endurance to get that sort of balance. When you're looking at the SMP team, they don't have that. They only come together to do the endurance races. So that trio have got that consistency. Whenever they turn up with the 72 car, it's always the same 3 of them together. So there's that little kind of tight-knit work going on together.
I mean, that's always a car. The 72 Ferrari, always a car that has got the potential to take victory. And it's a strong driver lineup. The 488 Ferrari, the twin turbo, rather than the ear-piercing, screaming, naturally aspirated 458, or 458, I beg your pardon. It's a super balanced car. It is really a race car that is adapted to road use rather than the majority of the GT cars that are competing here are road cars being adapted to the racetrack. So that car there has an inherent and fundamental, I would say, advantage over the rest of the field.
Yes, you think what a Ferrari conjures up in your head as a road car compared to what a Bentley conjures up in your head, and you are coming from opposite ends of the bookshelf and meeting in the middle, aren't you?
Well, what I think is Sloane Street, Knightsbridge, middle of the summer, rev, and the most garishly painted supercars, Bentleys, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, Mercedes, Porsches, whatever. Here we are at a racetrack.
Different in my neck of the woods.
This is their natural home.
The Bentleys I see most often in Warwickshire tend to be the 4-wheel drive Bentegas. So waiting to see when I see the first Ferrari. Already getting some of the Lamborghinis in the 4-wheel drive form. So SUVs are the money spinners, aren't they? But it's these cars that give the brand its glamour and its glory, and that's why people want an SUV made by the same people.
Very much so. It's a different market, obviously, but looking at the 488, this twin turbo, and it is now being superseded by, there's just recently relaunched, an even more powerful, I mean, outrageously, you have the 488 Pista, which is the effective track day version of the car that's racing here. And now Ferrari have gone even further. At something like, bog standard in the showroom, 750 odd horsepower. I mean, it's enough to make your eyeballs, hemorrhage.
Can you remember when a 308 was the Ferrari to have, and it was, I don't know, 280, 300 and something horsepower? It's just, it beggars belief.
I mean, it's just the world is, and the thing is, they're now so much cleaner. I mean, I know they've got this horsepower, but the engine, the emissions from these engines is beyond anything that 300 and whatever, 280 horsepower back in the early 80s was filthier than 700 horsepower is today.
Exactly right. Engine technology has come on just astonishingly. So who's going quicker at the moment? We've just had a quick lap in to go. 10th fastest from Max Cobalt, and that is in Stracker's Mercedes, their silver class car. He shares with Romain Monte and Esteban Mut, and so he's just gone up to 10th quickest. Louise Beckett is down in the pit lane at AF Corsa. Who's she caught up with?
Yes, absolutely.
Nick is just waiting to get into the car at some point during this session. What's possible for the Ferraris here in Barcelona?
I don't know. The car's pretty balanced. It's good. We're lacking a little bit of speed on the straight, so that's basically a little bit of a handicap.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So Nick Homerson in the AF Corsa Ferrari garage. When are you going in? I don't know, when they tell me. And that's the deal. When you've got a team like AF Corsa running things, they know exactly what the plan is, what the strategy is, so you don't have to worry. You just hang around. When they say get in, and
just something else, other viewers may have observed it. one of the difficulties that racing drivers have is if you want to go down the single-seater route, you've got to be slightly smaller than Nick is. I mean, Nick's a
Louise's
tall man.
height is ideal.
Ideal, Louise. Between Nick and Louise would be perfect.
Yeah.
These cars fit all.
Yeah.
It's a kind of one size fits all. So if you haven't had the chance to race in a single-seater career, then this is what GT3 is opening up. It's a global, not this particular championship, but it's a global race series. This being the premiere of that GT3 World.
And I think that's one of the reasons that the GT3 formula has been so successful and just keeps growing and growing and growing, is that it is a wide open door. Whether a young professional, you can earn a career in this, or whether you're a seasoned racer or a gentleman driver, you can race these cars. And as you say, you can fit in. You're not sticking out of some single-seater tub with your elbows in the airstream with some, you know, 4-stone, 17-year-old kid showing you the way home. You can race as an equal.
Yeah, just looking at 87, Mauro Ricci also noticed that the 88 Mercedes was leaving the pit lane this time. It's got Vincent Abril behind, so that's the ACA team is filtering through all their drivers. Interestingly, up, but that turn
and
exit
that is
3.
Vincent Abril. Oh no, that's number 4 car. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's blue at the back, so yes, caught me out.
But we've got 3 Mercedes, 3rd, 4th and 5th. We've got the 88, the number 4, and then the 90. And the 90 is within 1/10 of a second.
Yeah.
And that's the car currently being driven by Timur Boguslavski, as we watch the 87 creeping back, probably hoping that nobody actually saw it. So coming down into turn 4.
He'll be on the ready to go, no, nothing to report.
Yeah, the big secret giveaway is when he drives into the pits, puts the brakes on,
and it rattles.
About a ton of gravel will deposit in the middle of the pit lane. Maybe it'll end up halfway around the racetrack. So
that's the thing then, isn't it? You know, he gets out of turn 4, next heavy braking, he goes off on his own gravel as it shoots out the front and the back.
It is one of the issues about gravel. I mean, there's lots of good things about gravel. That's one of the negatives. Particularly, you've got a massive spoiler in the front of the car, just scoops it up and deposits it throughout the car. The worst place is getting into your brake ducts and into your getting locked between a brake, the rim of the car and the brake caliper, whatever. I mean, that's just another issue. So he's into the pits.
Yeah.
He may have gotten rid of most of it, but I'm sure that the team, and he will have said, look, sorry guys, I've gone off track, I want to bring it in. Because there can be secondary, even a small off like that. Just the aerodynamics are so sensitive, and these, even on a GT3 car, the sensitivity now, the development of aerodynamics is so fast that you need to make sure everything is as it should be. And
the other thing, particularly with that car, the 87, Jim Platt in there with an outside chance of the Pro-Am title. They don't want anything to potentially upset the apple cart. Now, here's the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes going rather slowly. Are they looking for a gap in
traffic?
For a gap.
Lucas Stolz is just waiting for the track to open up to give himself a chance to get a run. And so down into this sort of rather frustrating chicane that was installed a number of years ago, primarily because there was concern on the exit of this turn 16 without the chicane was becoming just simply too fast, and the runoff wasn't considered to be enough for the potential speed of the corner, and unless you knock the whole grandstand down and put out a wide runoff area. So the solution was to put the chicane in, but it does, I believe, upset the natural flow of the circuit, and it hasn't in real terms done anything to improve potential overtaking or motor racing. But Lucas Stolz on his way, so we'll keep an eye and see what he's going to do through these sectors to see if he's going to do anything that might spring that car, currently 4th quickest, up any higher.
I think that was the end of an outlap we just caught him on, so maybe just checking bits and pieces in the cockpit. Now, nothing particularly entertaining going on here. Slightly faster first sector time, but a quarter of a second away in terms of pace. So who else do we need to be looking at? Well, 6th fastest at the moment, and unfortunately already pinged twice for speeding in the pit lane. That's not the way you endear yourself to the headmaster. That's the fastest of our silver cars. That's the GPX Racing Golf Porsche, Roel Goethe, Jordan Grogor, Roel Goethe, I've said it already, okay, that's a pound. Benjamin Goethe, Jordan Grogor and Stuart Hall, Roel's son. Now look at great on the dashboard here. That's to reply to the team to see that if you've seen their message on the pit wall, flash left for yes, right for no, and both lights for I've got no clue. What was that message again?
Well, Lucas Stolz is totally compromised coming down to the chicane.
Well, let's get down to the pit lane and catch up with the WRT team. Louise is with Alex McDowell.
The number 17 team WRT has been in for quite some time, Alex. Can you tell us what's going on?
Yeah, it's just the power steering. One of the lines is split and it's caused a leak. So I had no grip on turning. I radioed in and they reckoned the power steering had failed. So they're connecting a new line up now and hopefully they'll top it up and it should work. Shea will get in the car and fingers crossed. Yeah, just an unfortunate thing to go wrong right at the first stint of this session. So we should be back out in no time, hopefully.
So you think it shouldn't be too much longer? In fact, I can see the guys putting the car back together now.
Yeah, I think they've connected a new hose. So they're just putting the floor back on and that'll be us back out.
Okay, thanks.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, frustrating. That's a sort of you almost sort of say a finger problem. It could have been a hose that might have split. You never know. I mean, there's so many things that can and often do go wrong. But they're certainly having a look around at the rear brakes, and I wonder whether it's hard to tell if there's any fluid that's gotten onto the disc, onto the caliper. It depends where the split occurred, of course. As more liquids are being, well, almost emptied in.
Topped up, yeah.
So it's a little bit of work in progress. There is the number 2, the black full. Oh, sorry, that's the number 2, the Dries van Thor Ezekiel Perez compact. That's the car currently with Ezekiel Perez compact, who is the quickest car. Alex Ribeiras also in that car. So it's Ezekiel Perez compact, Dries van Thor that are the regulars in this car. But in the endurance events, Alex Ribeiras joins in. Spanish driver, appropriate gold, of course. And they've had some disappointments over the last number of events. The potential, a car that's going to be in the podium, might be at the top of the podium or one on either side. Nevertheless, they're looking for a way to round up the season here in Europe on a high.
Yeah, WRT without a team's title for the first time, I was reading, in 6 years. And you know, you again, it's one of those names you always look to them to produce pace and titles. And this year, well, everything comes to an end, good and bad. And for them, unfortunately, it's going to be a titleless year.
Yeah, I don't think it's a reflection on the team. I think it's just a reflection on how much the competition has upped its game. Yeah. I mean, wherever you look, there's somebody there to beat you up.
Yep.
And I mean, there are race tracks that work well for the Audi, work well for the Mercedes, work well for a Bentley, for a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. And a Porsche. So I mean the Porsche, you know, I'll keep going on about it. They won Spa 24 hours.
There you go.
Make no mistake. The jewel in the crown of GT3 racing on a global platform.
It's not a bad year for Porsche if you've won the Spa 24 hours, definitely. So you may not win any of the other races, but again, they did.
They won at Monza, the opening race of the year.
Yeah.
So and it was that bog standard showroom lizard green, which carries very little commercial. There is the car, or the sister car that won Spa, the Gulf liveried car, and I mean, it was a magnificent performance. I'm not sure if that's still the 991.2 or is that the 992. I think it's got the 992 look front to it, but I think it's still the 991.2. And just an amazing car.
Yeah. And again, you look at a manufacturer like Porsche, and they rarely get it wrong, do they? They'll sometimes be a season with a new car, particularly this one, where they've really changed the whole philosophy of the 911. We're going to the mid-engine layout. It took a season to really get it nailed down, but they don't make mistakes very often. Stuart Hall aboard the car at the moment. That car is 6th quickest. It's now not, however, the top silver car. Top silver car is now the number 90 ACA ASP Mercedes, the red Mercedes, Nico Bastian, Timo Boguslawski and Felipe Fraga's car. So it's good battle for the top silver car. They're 5th and 6th overall. And 7th quickest, Raymond Vos now in the Mercedes that he shares with Tom Onslow-Cole. So Onslow coming into the pit lane a few minutes ago. So Raymond out for the first time in that Mercedes, car number 74, which is run by Ram Racing. And so they are currently the top Pro-Am car.
Such an evocative colour. I actually, during the down period, I attended an event where the owner of the largest collection of Gulf cars, father of Benjamin Gotha, and I mean, you were blinded by the blue and orange.
Yep.
Wherever you looked, I mean, there's about 40 cars in the collection. GT cars, Can-Am cars, goodness knows whatever. Yep. Indy cars. So massive commitment to a specific sponsor. I mean, that's a sponsor which was probably better known in the early 70s as the sponsor of the Porsche, but also, I mean, I raced a Gulf-sponsored car in 1973.
Yep. Well, Le Mans last year, Gulf was celebrating 50 years since their first win at Le Mans. So it's been around a long while. And as you say, yeah, Royal Goethe, yeah, lots and lots of us have favourite liveries, and for lots and lots of racing fans, Gulf is a real favourite. But none of us have had the ability and the financial backup to do what Royal has done, which is basically to try and go out and buy every Gulf, every car that ever comes on the market.
Absolutely, yeah.
And the Rothko collection, you know, now that he's building up with Duncan Hamilton's son Adrian, grandson Adrian, son Adrian, it's just going on. Yeah, it's just incredible. It's now starting to actually generate its own specific gravity where it attracts cars. They come to it rather than having to go out and find them almost.
I don't know how many cars, Gulf liveried cars around the world that are no longer, that are in private ownership that haven't been acquired by Gulf. So it is I mean, just truly amazing collection.
Well, number 17 Audi still in the WRT garage. Now, is there somebody inside? I'm not sure there is somebody inside. Sean Walkinshaw has been added to that driver lineup, so be good to see him back in the car.
Yeah, Sean is
back in the series.
Yeah, I think that Sean has been racing out in Japan and the Far East for the last number of years, and I know that there has been a little bit of communication, ongoing, offgoing, you know, bump into him here, there, and whatever. So good to see him back racing in Europe. Good to see him in a car which hopefully he will give it its just desserts.
Now, a few years ago, I was thinking, do you know, I don't really see his dad in him, but in that shot there, his dad's chin and mouth, it's exactly him. You look at like someone like Nico Prost, and you take one glimpse at him, even if you've never seen him in your life, you know exactly who he is because he looks exactly like the old man. I never thought Sean really looked like his old man, but he, in that shot there, properly an echo of young Tom.
I think as you mature, then a lot of the sort of the genetic side of your mum and dad start to evolve. So when you're in your late teens, early 20s, and I think Sean's probably about 22, 23 these days, and that may well come through. And I mean, he's the racer of the two sons. Ryan runs the family empire, you know, based out in Australia, but still flying backwards and forwards around the world to set up deals associated with United Autosports and McLaren.
Yep.
So, you know, it's a never evolving and growing business, the commercial side. Sean, on the other hand, goes out and does the racing. And actually had his own Formula 3 team as well.
Yeah. And of course, I only knew Tom when he was running teams, and so by that time he was in his sort of 30s. I didn't ever see a teenage or early 20s Tom Walkinshaw, so maybe actually he did look exactly like his young father.
I raced against Tom in 1971 in Formula 2.
Yeah.
When he came down from Scotland, he got a 712 March. I think it may have been backed at that time by a Curiacos, I'm not quite sure. And then, of course, he then set off on his own business career and then raced for him in 1987-88 in the very successful Silcut Jaguar team. Very good boss. I've had two good bosses in my life, certainly I can think of offhand. And the way I judge a good boss is that he pays on the due contract date. That was both, I'll not say who the other one is, but both paid on the due date.
Very good. Looking here at who's in the 52 Ferrari. Well, we talked to Nick Homerson, didn't we? So let's have a look down the timing screen and figure out who is in it now. Which page is he on?
It's Homerson, apparently.
Oh, it is.
Car is currently 13th, so...
Yeah. So see, I started at the wrong end of the timing screen.
Well, it may not be Nick that set the time. It might have been Bertolini that set the time, but certainly Nick Homerson now is timing and scoring, is giving us the transponder. There we are, Nick Homerson. So he's going again through the motions where we were just coming up to 50+ minutes since this session got underway. 38 and a little bit left to go.
I think he might be discovering there's a little less grip than he was hoping for exiting the chicane there. That was full-on drift mode.
Well, again, the thing we don't know is which set of tyres. I mean, obviously they're Pirellis, we know that. But how many laps these tyres will have done? We know, again, that Barcelona is a great neutralizer of tyres. It just levels the tyre out so quickly. When it's fresh, stacks the time. But as soon as you get 3, 4, 5 laps in, then there is, you know, a drop-off. It's not just with Pirelli, it applies to any tyre brand that you bring to this racetrack.
Can tell it's getting towards the end of the season from the onboard camera with all the bullet holes all over the screen. Teams never change screens, do they? Well, those holes will be in a screen when this car gets sold on in 3 or 4 years' time. It'll still have the same pot marks.
I think most of the teams, what they do is they run a wrap across the windscreen. In fact, in some events, for example, against Spa 24, they may have maybe 5 or 6 wraps. So after, you know, a long stint, particularly if it's been wet, then the team will just rip one of those tear-offs off as 74.
That's Ram Racing Mercedes, isn't it? It's Raymond Vos. Just ran a little deep. And that turn 2, 3?
Just coming out of 3.
Yeah.
So we don't know what caused that. We just saw the tail end of him just getting back up to speed. One might assume that he had a rotation, but there was no smoke permeating the corner, so I don't know. Maybe he was, I don't know. Anyway, underway again.
Plenty of experience here and in the car. Oh, yeah, did loop around.
He did indeed. He did a 360.
Or just kept it out of the gravel.
Well, he just managed to kiss the edge of the gravel, get it out of it. But anyway, that'll probably put a flat spotter 3 onto the Pirelli tyres, and that'll mean the thing will shake, rattle and roll, and it'll be horrible to drive, especially if you've got one big flat spot on one of the 2 front tyres.
As a new GT3 Mercedes coming next season, which will have an even bigger gaping whale shark mouth at the front. The little bar that goes across below the grille there, that vanishes. It's going to be the most enormous air intake you've ever seen.
Martin, have no fear. BOP, balance of performance, will take that all into account. It'll be neutralised.
Yeah. And again, you know, that's one of the great things that GT3 provides, is to get as level a playing field as you humanly can. And everybody goes, oh, BOP this, BOP that, but you know, you go to Spa 24 hours, you get 16 cars qualifying within a second. So okay, it's not all bad. It allows you to race a variety of different cars. Otherwise, like in Formula 1, there'd be one car that wins and everybody would have one.
I mean, the balance of performance was always, I mean, going back 4 or 5 years, contentious. Everybody felt that they were getting the wrong balance of performance. It's now reached the level of sophistication where there is really very little teams can do. I know that they try, maybe, for example, in the 6-hour race at Paul Ricard, the major event prior to going to Spa, to sandbag, maybe that's the description. Yeah. But that gets seen through as well. Yeah. So it is important. Just interesting again, Dries van Thor now out in the number 2 Audi, Phil Keane out in the 519 Lamborghini, and notice that the 563 Lamborghini about to go out onto track as well. Marco Mappelli was the driver who we think brought it in, so that car making its way down the pit lane. So again, teams just going through the motions. When they go out again later in the afternoon, then you might see a more refined effort coming from everybody. But again, temperatures will be different. Bearing in mind, tomorrow morning, Sunday morning, is when we have qualification. Oh, look at that. Oh, I mean, that was being aggressive, unnecessarily so. And all you do is just make the car unstable, and you just put load into the tyres, and they're not going to accept that. That was out of turns 1 and 2. And it still doesn't look, it looks very nosy, looks very twitchy on the nose.
Yeah.
not a nice way, in my opinion, to have a race car set up.
Doesn't look like he's entirely happy with the front end of it at all. Rory Penttinen shares with Pierrette and Martin Berry. This is an all-AM class car. Or an AM class car.
So he ran the curb and actually sort of got airborne.
Yeah.
Then it went into a whole series of tank slappers. Did well actually to get it back onto the racetrack, but it just indicated that for whatever reasons, the balance in the car looks to me as if initially the first turn on the steering wheel, it just bit so aggressively, then he had to take the steering lock out of it, then it flew in the air and bumped over the curb, and oh well. Oh well.
Well, at least he avoided hitting anything or getting stuck in the gravel, so... And he will have given himself a little warning not to ride that chicane curb quite so high.
I'm just looking to see where our friends are at Bentley. We've got Andy Soucek in 24th, and we've got Jordan Pepper down in 28th. Now,
yeah.
We know that Bentley don't go out in these, particularly this first of these two sessions, to nail it, but I just wonder where the performance actually is.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether this works a little bit better for them or not. Well, let's catch up with our Mercedes front runners at Black Falcon. Louise Beckett is with Jelmer Berman.
Jelmer Berman has just stepped out of the number 4 Mercedes. How was it?
Yeah, pretty good. I mean, it's quite busy on track. A lot of cars, obviously, with the final corner being quite slow. Sometimes you have some cars bunching up in order to get a clear gap, to create a gap. But I think it's going quite all right. At the moment, we're in P4. We've had some good practice sessions yesterday and the day before, where I think performance was pretty good. So we're looking forward to hopefully a good weekend.
Is the pressure on?
Well, in a way, yes, for sure. I mean, we're the defending Blancpain Endurance champions. My teammates and Team Black Falcon, you know, Maro and Luca, they are fighting for the overall title. It's quite tight. They are leading by 2.5 points. So we're gonna, you know, try hard for them to get that title. And at the same time, we're in a way still in contention for the Blancpain Endurance title. But there the gap is quite big. We're 22 points behind the S&P Ferrari. So for sure that won't be easy, but you know, it's racing and anything can happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Well, that's one of the factors here, is that they've got a tiny lead in the overall title race, which is sprint and endurance points combined, John. But 72, the S&P Ferrari has got a near 1-win margin. I mean, it's almost theirs, but 3 hours, anything can come and find you. Fate has a very nasty habit of ruining your plans.
Yeah, I mean, in my view, all that the Black Falcon Mercedes can do is go out, put it in pole, win the race. What they cannot do is control what anybody else, or in the case of the 72 Ferrari, what they're going to do. So all you can do is focus on what you have got to do, and that is, in the case, you've got a stellar driver lineup on that number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes. It's been competitive wherever it's been all year, and they know that by putting that car onto the front row of the grid is going to put them into the pound seat with a chance, A, to win the race, but to take away both championships.
Yeah, and the car that won here last year was the number 4 Black Falcon Mercedes, so they at least know that they're not necessarily at a track that doesn't favour them well. Two different Porsches, the 99 Rover racing car. That's the Dirk Werner, Matt Campbell, Dennis Olsen machine, with the GPX car number 20 right behind. And there's Benjamin Goethe in the Gulf-coloured car now. That car still 6th quickest from its earlier lap. So Benjamin Goethe in his first run in the car in free practice.
Yeah, I'm in Porsche heaven. We got 3 Porsches all in one shot. Just interesting, Dennis Olsen in the 99 car, almost machine gunning with gravel. Goethe in the Gulf car, so slightly different approach, more a combative approach from Olsen in the 99 than that of Goethe in the Gulf-sponsored car. Whether it'll make any real difference. I mean, I referred to the Bentley a minute or two ago. They're way down the timing and scoring at this moment. Likewise, these 2 Porsches, Rover Racing Porsche, it isn't important. It's all they're doing is going through, as we talked about, get the drivers in, get them out, get mileage, use the oldest tyre we have. We know that this racetrack will play tricks on us, but let's try and do our homework and get that result. Those are the new LED headlights. I'm getting those in mine.
Excellent. Well, Dennis Olsen, former single-seater star, raced here in World Series by Renault, GP3 as well, GP2, and behind him, Benjamin Goethe has had to have a couple of days away from school.
Probably not a bad thing.
He's at boarding school in the UK, so he's got a few days off to come and do. Obviously, this will come under the heading of sports lessons of some kind. So
I used to have days off from school as well when there was race meetings in my part of the world.
Were they approved?
Well, I always had to have a dental appointment.
Yes,
prior.
there you go. Your poor grandmother must have died so many times.
No, we didn't go down that particular avenue.
No, that's tempting fate.
There's always a dentist.
So, yeah, every time Mr. Bridger had to have a meeting in the Italian job, poor Aunt Fanny, she's still not well. Felipe Fraga in the number 90 Mercedes, and that is the top silver category car at the moment. So again, for those new to GT racing, and particularly in the Endurance Cup, the front-running cars predominantly are Pro Class, which means you can have whoever you want in it. Silver Class cars, a maximum of silver driver status. And we also have Pro-Am category and an All-Am lineup in a number of the cars as well. So, again, if you're either a young, up-and-coming driver with not a great deal of experience but a bit of speed, or whether you're a veteran or a gentleman driver, you don't end up having to battle the factory hot shoes. You can actually battle in a class with your peer group in terms of age and or ability.
Felipe Fraga muscling his
last
Mercedes
one into car 311 for track limits before a stop and go of 10 minutes.
So Felipe Fraga, you know, we know that he's not a race driver, he's a racer. He comes from Brazil, he's accustomed to having to get arms and shoulders out, and he was certainly getting the Mercedes up and over the curb, and again coming through that 7 and 8 sector. It was always hard to keep the car from running too wide in the exit of 7 before you have to make the cut back for 8. So that should be a seamless transition, but sometimes it becomes more seam and a lot less.
Well, let's see if we can follow Felipe Fraga round to the end of the lap, because he's been warned, or the car has been warned, about track limits on the final corner, turn 16, and that's the last one onto the pit straight. And obviously with a long pit straight, the further out you go, the more chance you have of keeping speed down the straight. But Fraga has been warned about, see, he's gone out again very wide there on the way into turn 16, but it's the exit that he's been warned about.
That's acceptable. They're coming through. He's got 2 wheels off the black stuff, over the red and white stuff, and onto the green stuff. But as long as he keeps 2 of those wheels, and I mean, again, careless coming out of the pit lane, going over the white line, that demarcation line, I mean, there's no excuse for that in my book.
That's going to earn you a penalty every time.
Well, you certainly will be observed, and it'll be noted, and you will get a note to your team manager that, you know, just coming out and thinking, oh, I know that some racetracks it is more difficult. I know at Paul Ricard, for example, during the race, when the sun was right in the driver's eyes, they got disorientated coming out of the pit lane, but that was just careless.
Yeah, there's no excuse for it. It's there for a really good reason. That's to save you from getting hit from behind by much faster traffic. So it's self-preservation. It's like, don't jump the red lights. They're there to save you from being hit by somebody coming the other way.
Tell the cyclists in Oxford that, would you please? But interestingly, over the entire field, the 46 entrants, there's only one car which is showing, and the driver, that's the 19, showing personal improvements. The Grasso Racing, and it's Gerhard Zweisler in behind the wheel. That's showing an improvement, a personal best. We haven't seen a purple. I can't remember, I think, since I've come into the booth. Have I seen a purple?
The number 19 car has done very few laps at all, actually. So how many laps in total have they done? Well,
A Santa Marto is behind the wheel.
But that car came in and has been in the pits for a long while, and it's only now that Santa Marta is going out, so that's only the second driver in that car. And how long have we got left? We've only got 24 minutes left in the session, so they've lost probably the better part of an hour, I would think, in the pit lane. They've done very few laps indeed.
Patrick Eisenheimer looking down to see where that 19 is.
Just lost a couple of places.
Yeah, it's just dropped down to 19th.
5 thousandths of a second slower than the car ahead of it, which is currently Matt Parry of the wheel of the 62R Motorsport Aston Martin. And there are similar gaps up and down the order, the gaps between the cars. There are some cars that are fully a tenth of a second apart, but generally it's hundreds. And between the fastest time set by the number 2 WRT Audi and the second fastest time, the 519 Orange 1 FFF racing team at Lamborghini, John, a massive margin of 2 thousandths of a second.
But what's interesting is
why try?
The best lap so far has been set by the number 2 Audi, which was set on its second lap.
Yeah.
The car we're looking at now, the 519 Giovanni Venturini, that set its best lap on lap 10. The 88 Mercedes set its best lap on lap 12. And then Maro Engel and the Black Falcon, or the Black Falcon, whoever was behind the wheel, on lap 2 again. Yeah. So what we're saying is the usual story. The initial flying lap or second flying lap at the start of a session will often be the quickest lap you'll do in the 1.5 hours of this session.
And those guys, 26, 27, 28 laps. The car that we were just talking about, number 19, setting a green time, that has done a total of just 4 laps up to now. So they are really feeling the pain. The other car that's got a real problem, we heard from Alex McDowell, the number 17 WRT Audi, that has done just 9 laps and is still stuck in the pits. The other car that's in the pits is the Sky Ferrari 93. We saw Chris Froggatt had spun it, couldn't get it restarted, and it's still in the pit lane, which suggests that it wasn't necessarily his fault.
Effect rather than cause.
I would think if you spin it and don't hit anything, generally it leaves the pits again fairly quickly.
So there is some issue which may have been the reason why Chris Froggatt spun. We sort of eliminated any thought of contact.
Yeah, he may have ended up with a box full of neutrals. Now, the fact that the car wasn't moving didn't necessarily mean that he didn't have the engine running. It just wasn't moving, so he might have ended up with no transmission, which is pretty much guaranteed to help you spin the car. So we'll have to catch up a little bit with that. Rick Breukers, 20th at the moment in the number 10 Audi. And Rick's got plenty of experience of this track as well. He's done the Barcelona 24 Hours a few times, sharing with Charles Weerts and Norman Nato. Norman Nato, another
highly regarded.
Yeah, convert from very high-level single-seater career.
A little story about Norman Nato. Coming back from an event earlier this year, arrived at Heathrow, doing my normal thing, going at 1,000,000 miles an hour to get through immigration, get to the car and get home. But somebody who was a major fan, a Brit, of Norman Nato, said, "Do you know who he is?" and whatever. I was familiar with it. So a guy who not any longer in the single-seater direction of a career path, but will have a great career here in GT3 and Blancpain or whatever we will be running in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's, and he's making a name for himself as a guy who can drop into different cars in different title races and produce the goods at the highest level, whether it's in a GT car or whether it's in a prototype, and that's fantastic. He's now a definite name within 18 months of starting this.
Well, he's one of the drivers that every manufacturer who are looking to field a pro car, but not necessarily exclusively. In Pro-Am, there's always a place for a driver of that level of skill and ability, and it's just an expanding, GT3 globally is expanding. Said Ashkenazi in the 54 Porsche.
Well, he's got plenty of Porsche experience as well, several years in the Porsche Mobil 1 Super Cup, so definitely not unfamiliar with 911s. And that sort of Porsche ladder where he started in Carrera Cup Middle East and then moved up into the Super Cup. And then, of course, you know, once you've got GT racing and Porsche sort of in your head, then you see all these other opportunities. Well, very
again,
wide out the final corner, one of the Audis.
Yeah, it's the same. Once you become essentially what I call a centrally contracted driver through a manufacturer, then it's their choice they direct you to wherever, either to whichever continent, let alone whichever race series. And it's an opportunity, you know, for a young driver who's looking to establish themselves and build a career, and you can continue in this form of motorsport for, you know, certainly a decade and almost 2 decades if you so choose to do so. And the racing is great.
And these guys won at Monza as well, so they've tasted pro-class victory. Zaid then showing with Klaus Bachler and Andrea Rizzoli. And this weekend, it's Andrea Zaid Ashkanani and Marco Seefried. So that's another car that only competes in the Endurance Series. They don't do the sprint races, at least this year. They don't do the sprint races. Racing drivers tend to like racing as much as they possibly can. Now that might slightly dovetail in with whatever else they have to do, but
you know, we talk about the difference between sprint and endurance. In fact, what endurance has become is just a long version of a sprint race.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a 3-hour event this weekend. Paul Ricard is a 6-hour event. Spa's 24-hour events. We're going, there's another major event coming up in Kyalami, a 9-hour event. They are just sprint events. But you have 3 drivers per car, and they last for a longer duration.
Yep. More track time, more racing opportunities. And Garage 59, Aston, Chris Goodwin at the wheel of that car, bringing it into the pit lane.
No mistaking that. Bentley coming down the 107, painted on the grille. I like that.
Yeah.
That is manner for heaven. There's the Ferrari, by the way. 70.
Car 55 track
limits. That dates back all the way to Le Mans, doesn't it? Where they used to have in the 1930s, they had the numbers painted on the grille. But you're right, for a commentator, fantastic, thank you. There's no such thing as too big race numbers when you're trying to spot them either from the grandstand or on TV. Well, there's the Sky Ferrari back out, so that one at least has left the garage. Alex McDowell's number 17 Audi, or WRT's number 17 Audi, is still in the garage. And in fact, that Garage 59 Aston, oh no, that's done a decent number of laps. That's done 29 laps. Chris Goodwin brought that car in, so they've done, I should think by now, they've cycled through all their drivers, joined by Alexander West and Chris Harris this weekend. Chris Harris had the opportunity of racing the Aston here, or being in a Ford Falcon in the Spa 6 hours, which is a historic race. And that, you know, either of those, that's not a bad weekend either way round, is it?
I mean, if he times it correctly and he's got the right sort of backing, he could probably have the private jet lined up at Barcelona airport to fly him backwards and forwards. I mean, it is not unknown for drivers to do. But I think that the reality is, if it was a 24-hour race at Spa, it would be doable.
Yeah.
But for a 6-hour race, it's not going to be viable.
No.
So he's doing his proper day job. The 6 hours would be maybe that would be a downtime job in a Ford Falcon, which undoubtedly would be challenging.
Well, that's the Frankel family Falcon, which he has raced before with journalist Andrew Frankel and his brother Frankel and his brothers. But the Spa 6 hours, that's just growing and growing and growing as a historic race. So top of the times, no changes. Michael Meadows, 3rd fastest in the 88 ACA ASP Mercedes. That's another of the pro cars. That car currently in the pit lane. Cars with the red highlights are currently in the pits for one thing or another. So 5th and 6th are our top 2 silver class cars. In 7th place is the Ram Racing Pro-Am leading Mercedes, Raymond Vos and Tom Onslow Cole. And here is the Honda, we call it
Bentley,
Honda
Parker Bentley spins up at 7 and 8.
Second spin for the Parker Bentley, one right at the beginning of the session.
Out of turns 1 and 2. Just out of turns 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So that just got the tail end of it. So Derek Pearce, an early morning wake-up call. So it thunders its way back.
Just 2 drivers in that car this weekend. So it was due to be a 3-driver lineup in the 31 Bentley, and that's the Parker racing car. So Derek Pearce and Seb Morris.
Okay, so Rob Smith's not...
no, not confirmed. So back to the Honda. This is run by Bob Neville's outfit for Jenson Button's team.
Yeah, Rocket Racing. So Jenson yet to front up, but he's not going to do it this weekend because he's actually further east.
Too busy winning things in Japan, isn't he?
No, he's not.
Is he not?
No, he's doing his 3rd sort of job as a retired Formula 1 driver, and that's an analyst at Sochi.
So he's rushed off to Russia, and Ricardo Sanchez, Matt McMurray, and Philip Frommenweiler are the trio. Now, who's kicked up the dust there? No indication.
So this car, the 22, is in with a chance in the Silver Cup. It could snatch 3rd place if the race goes favourably towards the Honda.
The Honda as a GT3 car was launched at Spa 2 years ago. 3 years ago, actually, now, wasn't it? It raced at Spa 2 years ago. And that was its Spa 24-hour debut, GT3 program. There's not many manufacturers that aren't interested in having customer racing programs. GT3 definitely allows that to happen.
Honda, the V6, the road version of the NSX is a hybrid, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas this is just a pure ICE.
Last warning to car 55 for track limits before stop and go 10 minutes.
Wow, 10 minutes stopping. Well, 12 minutes in the session. Now, if it exceeds track limits again and then has a 10-minute stop and go, and there's not 10 minutes in the session, is he parked in this session or is he parked at the beginning of the next one?
Well, I didn't want to draw attention to it, but about 3 or 4 minutes ago we were following the 55 coming through turn 16, last corner onto pit straight, and it was well and truly off. I mean, there was nothing on the tarmac. It was all over the green and over the curbs. So it's been observed and it's been noted, and the warning has now been made.
Yeah. Not just you that spotted it, clearly. So that's the father and son Skottors, Peter and Stein Skottors, sharing with Mattia Drudi in the. In fact, that was that out of the corner of my eye. Our commentary position is in the very nearest corner of the grandstand to the final corner. So we've got a glass window all the way across the front and all the way down the side. And as John and I were chatting 10 minutes ago, there was a grey Audi going through the gravel on the exit of the final corner. That's the 55 car. Now, if that doesn't warn you, I'm not sure a 10-minute stop and go is going to.
Well, if you want to go off track, don't do it right in front of where the race director's position is. I mean, he's watching screens as we are, and you are at home. But of course, he's got the visual of the exit of turn 16, just if he wants to have that.
Yeah.
Well, he only get to see it that one occasion. That's
Miguel Molinar in the 72 S&P Racing Ferrari. And he is the 3rd of the drivers in that lineup, another of the factory Ferrari stars that is available to help out.
Did you hear the turbo screeching?
Yeah.
Don't hear that too often.
A little bit of wastegate chatter. Takes you right back to the 80s.
Takes you back to 956s.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unusual for it to be quiet enough by the camera to hear that. You know, in a pack of cars with, you know, as soon as you've got a Lamborghini or an Aston running near it, you've got no chance of hearing that. But when it's on its own...
Well, the Aston's are now turbocharged too.
Yeah. But it's just the volume of the bellow that masks everything else. It's a really strong lineup in that car. It's hardly surprising they've got a comfortable lead in the series. Miguel Molinar, Mikel Alishin, Davide Rigon. I mean, nothing wrong with any three of those.
I mean, it's a driver lineup that across all three drivers there's not a lot to pick and choose. I mean, on the day you might say that, well, is Miguel Molina going to be the quicker of the three? Davide Rigon, I suppose if I was pushed, would probably suggest would be the quickest of the three, but it's so close.
Yeah.
Aston Martin, Jake Dennis, currently that car is, well, it was, I noticed it just a minute ago, 76. It's up in 11th place.
Yeah.
So now they're throwing a set of tyres. Is this just a change of tyre, or is this just a slightly fresher set? It's not going to be a new set,
no.
but we will know very quickly when we see what Jake Dennis does when he goes out and completes his first flying lap, because that will indicate that they've been on tyres that have done a lot of mileage, and now they want to get a truer picture of what the car will do on a fresher set of rubber.
Yeah, fresher probably. Definitely didn't have stickers on.
Into the pit lane, hammering it round that curve. You can do that up until here. We get down to 50 kilometers per hour. You can almost get out and push it quicker, but that's the speed limit.
It's like when you come off a long period running on the motorway and you come up to a slip road, 30 miles an hour seems like it's absolutely stationary.
I tell you what, the pit lane speed limit here is way, way more strictly adhered to.
Yep.
So in she is, sits there.
50 k's is one of the lower pit lane speed limits as well. Often it's 60. But there's the M Sport garage. So
I think the reason, I think it's actually general, but it's such a busy pit lane.
Yeah.
There's so much activity going on in the interest of safety. It doesn't benefit anybody. Everybody's in the same situation. And
yes.
It's not as if there would be a strategy where you're playing with tire changes. Your tire changes only ever come at the point when you're doing a driver change and refueling.
The same pit lane that has to accommodate 20 Formula 1 cars has to accommodate 50 plus GT3 cars. So you're jamming a quart into a pint pot, really, aren't you?
Certainly are. So 107, who's behind that? Stephen Kane. So
that's 28th fastest. Derek Pearce 27th fastest in the Parker Racing Bentley, but the fastest Bentley 24th quickest Andy Soucek. Saw those guys at dinner last night at the little restaurant just down the road from our hotel, and they were looking very relaxed.
Were they selecting a local red, or were they branching out and doing something more international?
Local red.
Okay.
Yeah. I think Andy Soucek may well have been the go-to man there. I haven't seen his dad this weekend. Almost always see him around, and 107 really hopping over the curb, says Jules Gounon.
Yeah, he's coming in. That was he gave up the position to the Audi behind. He got out of the way.
He wanted to get the Audi out of the way as well, so he could actually get into the pit lane, which is why it was all a bit
clumsy. But
yes,
sort of after you,
Claude. Exactly the phrase I was going for.
But just if we look down through timing and scoring, there are so many driver-car pairings which are what I would consider to be completely out of sync with what we would expect. And there's one of those, the 25 Audi Christopher Haase. Well, it's in 9th place right now. And you'd imagine that was always going to be a top 10, whether it be the bottom or the middle or the top of the top 10. Christopher Haase, Simon Gachet, and Boccolacci.
With saying, oh, he's only in 9th position. 1 second from the fastest lap takes us all the way down the top 25 cars. 24 cars within a second in free practice.
Now you understand why this is going to be a log jam of a race. There's the differential between the top 24, 25 cars is a second. Can you imagine how you're going to find a way through without getting into an aggressive stint or taking a risk that you hadn't got control over? Qualifying on Sunday morning will be absolutely
manic.
It's just going to be the most stressful part of the weekend in reality for everybody. It'll determine ultimately the outcome of not just the race but of the respective championships.
Better have plenty of coffee tomorrow morning.
Well,
it's at 9:30 qualifying.
Yeah, it's a 9:30 qualifying. And again, the good thing about this session is it started at 10:20, so ambient conditions, ambient temperature, track temperature, not going to be much warmer than it will be at 9:30. And the benefit is that we'll have had a lot more running. There'll be a lot more rubber on the racetrack from not just this, but from some of the other activities that are taking place here this weekend. So the track ought to be at its optimum in terms of out-and-out pace tomorrow morning in qualifying, and that's always very exciting as we ride on board with the number 4 Mauro Engel behind the wheel. Listen. Well, there's no way he's going to keep that flat to the floor, but down the hill on the... It used to be very bumpy here coming into turn 10. Makes his apex clean exit as well. You almost try to make that exit of turn 10 and the sweep into 11 and 12 almost as seamless as possible, not to induce unnecessarily load. Pulls over to the right now, but there's a reason for that, because there's a quicker car coming through. It's the 52 Ferrari. So I thought Maro Engel might have been trying to do something, but maybe he's decided that's time to come into the pits. Indeed, he has. There we are. You never lose it, do you, Mark? Never lose it.
Exactly, that's the racing driver's instinct, and that's what, you know, you're reading it and going, okay, why has he done that there? Okay, he's either making space for himself, but it's not a qualifying run, so the other option is coming into the pits. So in he came. So only Giovanni Venturini in the 519 Lamborghini and Jordan Grogor from the top 8 cars are out on track at the moment.
So there is the 52 Ferrari. I'm waiting to see, as Alex Lind has now been put into the 76 Aston Martin. We saw the car up, other tyres being fitted. So it's Alex Lind who's now behind the wheel. And he is just, his last lap was 149.9. I compare that to the quickest lap so far. That was set at the very beginning of the session, 145.3. So I'm assuming that Alex Lind on his first flying lap will now be getting his head down, getting on with the job.
Yeah, I wonder how fresh the rubber is. Well, the answer is he's set the quickest sector time for the car in Sector 1. Top speed, which will have been down into first turn, 212 kilometers an hour.
Get it in, get that nose in, make the apex. I mean, a little bit too aggressive on the throttle just on the exit. But again, we don't know the condition of the tyre. If the tyre is at the end of its natural life, it's going to be slip, slide. What was that great James Taylor? Slip, slide, slim, and the blue, whatever it was. One of them, James Taylor's great songs.
I was thinking Paul Simon. I always think Paul Simon, slip sliding away. That's where your grip goes.
I mean, away off the racetrack, coming out of turn 15 and over the curb on the inside. Wow, fighting it all the way. I mean, the back end of the car wants to swap with the front.
It's taking a lot of curb in that final corner.
It is taking a lot of curb. That might have marginally upset the handling of the car. And it's only taking 6th gear quite late down the straight.
260 plus, so 160, 63, maybe 165 as he gets onto the brakes. Down into the first corner, quick enough. Certainly, you know, when you look at it from the outside, it all looks very under control. John, if you put one of the fans in the passenger seat, they'd be absolutely certain that they were going to die in the first corner. Long before the brakes went on, you'd know that you were crashing, and then the brakes come on and the thing stops like it's hit a wall.
This car currently 13th overall, so it is it's a Pro-Am car.
Third in Pro-Am.
It's Pro-Am. So, I mean, it's not what I would loosely describe as a car that's going to be in the middle or the back. It'll probably be more to the front of the middle of the field than the back of the middle of the field when the combined times are all tabulated.
Currently 6/10 of a second, the car's fastest lap away from the fastest lap of the session. So that's where you find them. Louis Machil's down in 13th place, just behind the 87, which is being driven by Jean-Luc Bobelic. That's ACA ASP's Pro-Am car, which Jim Pla is in.
Little story about this car, the 519. The drivers of the car were saying to the team, we don't think there's something we're not getting out of the car. So the team boss, Andrea Caldarelli, who races 563, said, all right, I think he said it might have been to Phil Keane, Phil, go out, do a run of 5 or 6 laps, come in, then I'll jump in and drive the car. So Phil went out, set a time, and then Andrea got into that same car, 519, went out, did his laps. It was half a second a lap slower than Phil Keane, our local boy.
Right.
And that got a few heads being scratched.
Yeah. Interesting.
That's tales out of school, by the way.
Well, see, that's really good for Phil Keane, isn't it?
Absolutely.
When the team boss gets in and can't match your time, but you're complaining about the car.
Exactly.
Yes.
So I don't know what the problem was, and they were going to you know, there's so many factors in a race car, and of course the 563 is the prime car in that it's the car that's likely to win any of the races overall. Whereas the 519, it's a pro car as well, actually.
Yeah,
it is a pro car.
Yeah,
but it certainly has not had the success that 563 has had, and that was why the issue was raised, and that's why the boss did the decent thing as the BMW loops around. And I wonder who was behind the wheel. That was Karim Auger,
yeah,
the cousin of Mansour Auger and the Auger family. Again, that's just that nasty sort of long right, the transition from coming left to right. Once it goes, just the momentum, the sort of pendulum effect takes over.
Bit
and he's in the pit lane anyway.
Yeah.
We've decided with what we've run out of time, the checkered flag is but it's just actually been flown.
Yep.
So the session is now effectively over. You can finish your lap and the time will be recorded and the laps will be recorded, but Karim Auger takes the checkered flag in the pit lane.
Boots and Gignon with 2 cars in the field, both in the AM class. There's that BMW for Karim and Gennaro Bonifredo, and they're also running a Lamborghini Huracan.
Well, there is Phil Keane.
Yep.
So I wonder, is he saying to his boss, well, get into my car this weekend and see if I'm still quicker than you.
Well, there is Andrea, and interestingly that they've got Phil Keane on the driver's strength, but when Dennis Lind wasn't available for 563, they drafted in Albert Costa. So let's see now what Louise has got. She's down at WRT with Dries van Toor.
Dries van Toor bringing in the number 2 Audi, fastest in that session. That's promising going into the pre-qualifying.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still early. You know, the session went very well for us. I think the car is working quite well in this session, so hopefully we can keep it up for later today and hopefully for tomorrow as well. But yeah, it's a good start of the weekend, but you know, it's still a long ways to go and a long weekend to go. So.
Sure, how do you expect the Audis to perform here in Barcelona?
Well, looking at last year, we were quite okay. We were not. I mean, I don't think we were the strongest, but we'll see. In the past, it has also been shown that it's been quite strong. So hopefully, it can be this year as well. But let's keep our fingers crossed that it is strong this year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, at the moment, fastest by 2 thousandths of a second from the 519 Lamborghini. So again, free practice tells teams a lot, John, tends to mask from us possibly what everybody else has got up their sleeve. And those laps set very early. Fastest lap for car number 2 set on lap 2. Fastest car for car number 4 set on lap 2. And in the top 35 cars, almost all the quick times came on lap 2 or 3 of the session.
Yeah, and it's the familiar story.
Fresh tyre.
Well, the tyre, I mean, in most cases it would not have been a new tyre, it would be maybe the best of what they have remaining.
Well, let's take a look then. WRT Audi car number 2 is fastest of all from the orange one. Huracan second quickest, 88 and 4 in the frame. But look at how close the times are. Top 15 covered by 7/10 of a second, and in fact 14th and 15th, the gap between them 0.00 thousandths. Identical times set. Just 2 thousandths between our fastest 2 laps of the 90-minute session. 2 red flags early on to interrupt them. Neither of those particularly adversely affecting anything. And if you're within a second of the fastest lap, you're somewhere in the top 24 cars. So that includes the faster of the 2 factory Bentleys, the 108, which Andy Soucek rounded out the session in. The other 2 Bentleys just outside, in the top 30 though, so within 1.2 seconds of the fastest lap. It really is enormously tight, and with 46 cars going out on track, almost all of them doing a respectable number of laps. There were a couple that had problems. Number 17 WRT Audi, that's only done single-digit number of laps. The 93 Ferrari has only done 7 laps in the entire session. So the Tempesta Sky car, which stopped with a problem early on, only came out right at the very end again. So that car with a lot to catch up, and the Boutsen Gignon Lamborghini Huracan was the final car on the timing screen. So for the GT Series Endurance Cup, free practice is done and dusted, and they will next be back out on track for pre-qualifying this afternoon. And the question then will be, how much does that change the order of things? Where are we going to see the big improvers? Because if you haven't got it together in pre-qualifying, you might be in trouble. First of our red flags came for a spinning Lamborghini, the second for a stranded Bentley. And that probably robbed the teams of a little bit of fluidity, but only about 5 minutes running was lost in the 90-minute session. 72 SMP Ferrari cycled all the drivers through with no major woes, and all of our championship contenders and front runners in the major classes seemed to be pretty much problem-free. So free practice, vital time to get drivers experienced with the track, to find out where the limits of their own abilities and those of their tyres lie, and hopefully to avoid the gravel trap and the attention of the stewards. Next track action then for the GT Series Endurance Cup will be at 3 local when we go pre-qualifying.